Are you ready for the next giant leap in human space exploration? The NASA Artemis I mission update is here, and it's bringing us one step closer to sending humans back to the moon and beyond. Get ready to discover the latest news and updates on this critical mission that will test the capabilities of NASA's Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft, and pave the way for a sustainable human presence on the lunar surface. NASA's Artemis 1 moon mission, the agency's first big step toward returning astronauts to the lunar surface, launched to the moon on November 16 on a critical test flight to return astronauts to the moon. It splashed down on December 11. Artemis 1 is the first test flight of the agency's new Space Launch System megarocket and the Orion spacecraft. The SLS rocket launched the uncrewed Orion spacecraft on a 26-day mission, during which it will orbit the moon before returning to Earth. The mission of Artemis 1. The NASA Artemis I mission is the first uncrewed test flight in a series of missions that are part of the Artemis program. The goal of the Artemis program is to send the first woman and the next man to the moon and establish a sustainable human presence on the lunar surface by the end of the decade, with the ultimate aim of preparing for human missions to Mars. The Artemis I mission will be launched on NASA's Space Launch System, SLS, rocket and Orion spacecraft, which will be tested together in space for the first time. The spacecraft will travel beyond the moon, to a distance of about 280,000 miles, and then return to Earth, testing critical systems and hardware necessary for human exploration of deep space. The mission is also a crucial step in the development of the Lunar Gateway, a space station in orbit around the moon that will serve as a hub for future lunar missions. The Artemis I mission will test the capabilities of the Orion spacecraft to dock with the Lunar Gateway and demonstrate the ability to transfer crew and cargo to and from the Gateway. The Artemis I mission is a critical milestone in NASA's plan to return humans to the moon and establish a sustainable presence on the lunar surface. It will pave the way for the Artemis I mission, which will carry a crew of astronauts around the moon and back to Earth, and eventually for the Artemis I mission, which will land astronauts on the lunar surface. How Artemis-1 has GDOVERD years. This project has been a labor of love for Berth, who has been involved with it for nearly 2 decades and has seen many obstacles come and go. One of the biggest challenges has been maintaining support across 4 administrations, he said. The administrations of the U.S. Presidents Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden have all put their spin on the nation's human spaceflight program, shifting NASA's focus from the moon to an asteroid and then back to the moon again over the years. Artemis timelines have also moved around. President Trump targeted 2024 for the program's first crewed lunar landing, for example. The mission has changed a lot of times, Bertha said. On top of the politics came the coronavirus pandemic, which certainly didn't help. But Bertha said the pandemic didn't have as big an impact as he had feared. It was difficult for people to cross international borders, he said, noting that complication somewhat slowed us down. There have also been plenty of Artemis naysayers, those who argue that sending humans back to the moon is a waste of time, money, and resources. SLS missions. Artemis 1, 2022, was the successful uncrewed test of the SLS and Orion, and was the first test flight for both crafts. The Artemis 1 mission placed Orion into a lunar orbit, and it then returned to Earth. The SLS Block 1 design uses the ICPS second stage, which performs the translunar injection burn to send Orion to lunar space. For Artemis 1, Orion braked into a polar distant retrograde lunar orbit and remained for about 6 days before boosting back toward Earth. The Orion capsule, separated from its service module, re-entered the atmosphere for aerobraking and splashed down under parachutes. Artemis 1 updates. Following 4 canceled launch attempts due to engine issues and tropical storms, Artemis 1 successfully launched from the Kennedy Space Center at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time on Wednesday, 16 November. On Day 5 of its mission, 20 November, the Orion spacecraft entered the Moon's sphere of influence, meaning the Moon became the main gravitational force acting on the craft, rather than the Earth. On the following day, Day 6, 21 November, the Orion capsule reached and performed a flyby of the Moon, coming to within around 130 kilometers of the surface. The spacecraft exited the lunar sphere of influence on Day 8 as it traveled away from the Moon. The spacecraft performed a burn to enter the distant retrograde lunar orbit on Day 10. It's distant, as the craft is flying at a high altitude from the lunar surface and retrograde because it's flying around the moon in the opposite direction the moon travels around Earth. Then, on 26 November, day 11, Orion broke the record for the farthest distance traveled by a spacecraft designed to carry humans into space and back. The record was previously held by Apollo 13, which traveled 400,171 kilometers away. Orion reached its max distance of 432,210 kilometers from Earth on day 13, as part of its lunar orbit. Another burn was performed on day 16, December 1, to exit distant retrograde lunar orbit, sending Orion back towards the moon and marking the start of its journey home. On day 20, December 5, the craft performed another lunar flyby, reaching around 128 kilometers from the moon. It used the moon's gravity to slingshot itself back toward Earth and successfully landed in the Pacific Ocean on December 11. As we eagerly await the launch of the historic NASA Artemis I mission, it's clear that the future of human space exploration has never been brighter. The Artemis program represents a bold and ambitious vision for humanity's next steps beyond Earth, with the ultimate goal of establishing a sustainable human presence on the moon and preparing for human missions to Mars. The Artemis I mission will be a crucial step in this journey, testing critical systems and technologies necessary for deep space exploration and laying the foundation for future lunar missions. If you enjoyed the video, kindly subscribe to our channel or you will miss out on our videos.